I think we're close enough that we can get going. Everybody, please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The roll call, please, Amy.
Mr. Bova, Mr. Brodsky,
Here.
Mr. Coyne,
Sure.
Mr. D'Elia,
Here.
Mr. Dodge,
Here.
Mr. Ford, Mr. Haskell, Mr. Karam,
Here.
Mr. Miola,
Present.
Mr. Santa Croce, and Mr. Saunders.
Here.
Sorry. And Ms. Sesney.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I'd like to welcome you, Jeff, to our board, and Dale to our board. Look forward to working with you. In your package, you have the draft minutes from our December 16, 2024 meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Thank you. Is there a second? Thanks, Bruce. Any comments, corrections, additions? Was Mark here? I'm waiting for Mark.
Say aye, Mark.
We're approving the minutes, Mark, from December.
Switch it, Mark, this way. There you go, bud.
Any comments or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. We now have the election of officers, the current slates before you. Of course, anybody who would like to volunteer to submit their name or nominate somebody else is free to do so.
This is the same speech he gives at GLDC.
And I get the same response.
Real quiet, like crickets, huh?
Well, somebody needs to make a motion about something.
Existing slate?
Yeah.
No.
Motion to move the existing slate? That's what you want to do?
Go ahead.
All right, motion to move the existing slate.
Is there a second? Thanks, Rich. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, and thank you for your confidence.
Thank you.
We have a resolution for award of contract regarding engineering. Dan?
We're looking to replace 5 of our diesel generators at 5 of our pump station locations, consisting of Christensen Road, Hanger Road, Southern Reservoir, Mallory, and Route 12. In order to complete these replacements, we need to hire a design consultant that can prepare the plans and specifications and bid documents. So we went out to bid for consulting services, received 2 bids, the lowest of which was from ME Engineering in the amount of $72,500. And I've had Ken review the contract, and I believe Ken is satisfied.
Right.
So looking for the board to consider that.
Are these all of our existing generators?
No, just a fraction. Probably we've got 15 or more. So these are the ones that are really old, antiquated, old in age, or where their parts are not really readily available.
Do you anticipate next year after, having to do any others?
No, because we also have another program ongoing, but we recently purchased a portable generator, so those maybe not so critically high sites, we're looking at providing docking stations so we can hook up the portable generator to those. But these are more of the high priority pump stations that are old, antiquated, that need to get replaced.
Yes.
Diesel?
Yes.
Any other questions for Dan?
Oh, is one of these in a Oriskany going up to the airport?
Yes, hangar. Yep. That particular one is indoors right now. We're going to move it to the outside for safety reasons.
Anything else? Someone care to move the motion as presented? Bruce, thanks. Vince, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Resolution and MOU for Teamsters timekeeping.
So the non-union people that work for the Water Authority have been clocking in for maybe about a year and a half now. We settled an agreement with the MEA where they agreed to clock in back on April 1st. There was an incentive provided to them as part of the negotiation because for some reason nobody here wants to clock in. So we had to incentivize them in some way. They were the next group, the third and final group that we wanted to start clocking in for 2025 to, keep our auditors happy, to be compliant in every way, shape, and form with all the new rules and regulations. And also, for us, for purposes of freeing people up from manually entering people's hours. I mean, that does take a lot of time, especially down at the maintenance yard. There's a lot of employees down there. We had one person, entering all those punches. So by having people clock in for themselves, that individual is going to be freed up to do some other work that's going to be beneficial to us. The Teamsters initially did not want to do it. We have been discussing this, negotiating since early October. They finally took it to a vote after we settled at 3.5% from 3%. So they're getting a 0.5%, which is approximately like $13,000 to $15,000 is the total cost. We don't need any additional money that will be absorbed in the budget. And it passed by a very narrow margin, but they did agree to time keep, and this is monumental for us. It brings everybody up to the 21st century, and everybody's clocking in, company-wide.
When Sandra says clocking in, we use ADP for payroll. There's a module that allows them to record their start time, their finish time, their break time. They can do it through a number of different devices. But because the individual employees and the Teamsters were not participating in their own timekeeping, it becomes a mandatory subject of negotiation. There was some thought within the Teamster unit that since they're in the last year of their contract and we'll be negotiating with them next fall for the new contract, that maybe they'd hold off and try to push it to that and see if they could get more use out of it, greater leverage as a negotiating thing. So what Sandra did, which I thought was wise, and we did discuss it with Ellis, if we could, number one, we wanted to get them using it now, not wait a year, because we weren't fully automated. Number two, it takes it off the table for the negotiation next year at a fairly reasonable price. The last year of their contract, which is 2025, they were scheduled to get a 3.0% increase. The Management Employee Association was already at 3.5. So the worst this does is create some parity between the two units, but it essentially gets them into compliance. So the deal was, instead of getting 3.0 starting in January of this year, it's going to be 3.5, and the marginal amount, as Sandra said, is a little bit under $14,000. But what we get in return is something that we think is more affordable than them holding out for the next negotiation, number one. Number two, it eliminates all the paperwork that an employee was doing and frees up a lot of staff time. So we think it pays for itself, more than just that number.
And compliance.
And we're compliant with all kinds of federal regulations and stuff.
And while we were supposed to meet only on February
3rd.
3rd, we're meeting tonight specifically because of this, because it allows them to do the payroll right out of the gate the right way without having to backtrack. Just in case anybody was wondering why we're here in January. Anything else, Pat? Oh, yeah.
No, one question. Is it fingerprint or card?
They can either do it on their computer, like right on their screen. They just click on the ADP icon and hit clock in, or on their mobile device. To have a card or a fingerprint that involves a reader, which is actually like costlier, you have to pay for that. There's no additional cost to us, like from ADP, to actually have them do this if they use their mobile device or a computer.
And some of these guys report in the middle of the night straight to a job site. So they can clock in there without having to go someplace else first to do a fingerprint impression or something like that.
Very good.
So it'll, without doing that, it allows us the flexibility. If it was a fixed station where everybody worked the same place during normal hours, that's a pretty good security thing, but it would just really cramp our style.
It's an app on their phone?
So yeah, I can show you from far away. You just click on ADP, you click on quick clock, and the little time comes up and you just hit end work and start work. It's very simple.
Does it record the IP?
I don't believe so, no. I mean, we don't have any geofencing or anything set up because we need them to be able to clock in from anywhere because their clock starts as soon as they leave their house when they're on emergency.
But what about regular non-emergency?
Most of the people up here clock in from their workstation. The guys at the yard, we give them flexibility to use either one. I mean, up here they can use either one, but most people have been using their computer. If somebody clocks in and they're not at work, that would be obviously subject to discipline because you're falsifying records. So
But they can't. And there's no.
there is a penalty of you're risking your job. So it's not really advisable. Previously, we were putting, the way our timekeeping previously worked was everybody had their regular hours if they didn't put a time slip in. There was truly no verification at that point. Now they're clocking in and attesting like, this is my start time. If anybody, I would imagine none of our employees want to cheat the system, but I mean, if they did, I'm sure they will get caught.
Oh, and we also have GPS tracking on all the vehicles. So if we have any suspicion at all,
On the
we,
phones?
we know where the vehicle was at any minute during the day.
Does the GPS go with that app? So in other words, you clock it in, they know exactly where you are.
The GPS is attached to the vehicle.
No, we are not. We are not recording their location. The only way you could do that, you could set up a geofence for this building, but the smallest geofence anyway is a 1/4 mile, so there's really no advantage to doing that. I mean, they could still clock in from, down the block, but again, I'd like to think we have honest employees, and the ones that are dishonest they will inevitably get.
But if someone's ending a job at 2 a.m. on a water main break and they decide they're going to clock out at 4 o'clock in the morning, everybody would have to agree to do the same thing. If we had the slightest doubt, we could see that the vehicle was moved and away from the site long before that. So it'd be very hard for them to get away with that.
We have 89 employees. Each department, with the exception of the maintenance yard, is relatively small. I mean, Frank has a very good handle on exactly what his people are doing. There's also paper documentation of when jobs ended, if there were any questions from that perspective, for start time and end time. Yeah, they know what time they call employees out because we use Everbridge, and we have a tracking mechanism because they go on the clock when they're out, on an emergency job. Their clock starts running as soon as they leave their house. So we know what time, we called them, and we know what time jobs end because we have a paper record. But again, I mean, Frank, the supervisor at the yard, has a very good idea of exactly what each one of his people are doing at any given time. There's no doubt there. Plus, again, GPS on the vehicles, we hope not to have to, pull those records, but I guess in questionable situations we would have to. But again, there was zero monitoring prior to this. And this way, if someone is cheating the system, which again, I would hope they're not, but if they were, at least we can say you attested to this time, you clocked in at this time, however you were not. Before, we had zero proof to, catch a cheater, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I'd like to think, again, we have good and honest employees, and there's, this isn't meant to be a mechanism to catch people doing things wrong. This was meant to comply and with, regulations and to make timekeeping easier. And again, if we have those unfortunate situations, we deal with them as they come up. Hopefully we don't have too many of those or any at all.
Is the supervisor responsible if the employee doesn't clock?
So the employees let their supervisor know. They see their time card at all times, and it's not like whatever's on their time card we automatically pay. They have to sign off on their time card, and the supervisor has to. So it's approval, then it goes to payroll to get paid, and then we also look at it. So there's a lot of eyes looking at all the time cards.
So if I forget to clock out,
Yes, this has happened already because they started doing it already. They started doing it last week.
who puts in the time?
They would have to email their supervisor the time that they came in. The supervisor enters it, and we keep the paper record of them asking for the change for auditing purposes in the payroll file.
It's the supervisor, just not
Yes.
another employee.
Another employee can never make an edit. You can't even edit your own time card. You can request, like if you miss a punch, you can request to put a back punch in, but that still has to be approved in the app by the supervisor. It doesn't automatically punch in.
There's a lot of fail-safes in the system. And
What
we
was
have,
the cost of the system?
No additional cost from what we were already doing. We were already using time and attendance. We don't have time clocks or anything like that. So everything's the same.
It didn't cost us any more money.
System did not cost us any more.
For the employees to use the system, it's costing us.
It is not costing us any more money since they started using it.
Monthly cost for the software.
For ADP in general, oh goodness.
So this is ADP is for everything.
Oh yes, we don't have a separate timekeeping system. There's been no additional costs that have been added from us adding the Teamsters into the.
They deposit money, and this timekeeping system is a module that comes with that whole package.
I want to say it's like 20-something thousand for the year. That includes cutting all the checks. That includes all the tax, the ACA record keeping. When I started working here, we were spending 40,000 on ADP. We spent 20-something thousand now, so we've cut at least 15,000 in cost in 2 years for ADP anyway.
Plus all the manual.
Right, plus all the manual entry, right? So.
Any other questions?
That's good. That's good. move.
Someone care to move the motion as presented? Thanks, Vince. Second, thanks, Rich. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next one, Sandra, is yours as well.
Yes, so we had, I don't know, I'm assuming most of the board knows Donnie Ross. He was a longtime employee. He retired recently. So we are down a member of the water utility team. There are only 4 members on that team, and they're crucial for our existence, right? They keep the system up and running, the pumps functioning. Dan's way better at describing what they do. But they're very important, and there's only 4 of them. Right now we have 3. So there's 3 people in an on-call rotation, and there's only 3 people performing this crucial function of our system. We need to recruit a 4th. We had somebody out on a leave within the last few months. 0 people bid this position because it's a lateral. It's not a promotion. It's the same pay as a water maintenance person. So it's very hard to get an employee to lateral or a group of employees to want to lateral, for the same pay, and not easier work by any means. The solution, we talked to the unit. We said, hey, if we offer an extra, I think it ended up being $1.49 or something like that, pay for this position, are we going to get any bidders? They canvassed their workforce. And for it to be a promotion, it would open it up to all the people that are currently water maintenance people and all the individuals that are motor equipment operators. So our goal, we don't want one person to bid it. We want multiple people to bid it, because what happens when you have one person bid it is, whether they're good or not, you're stuck with that person. We can't get people from the outside for this position because of the qualifications. We want them to have a year in our system at least. And we also don't want one bidder, because we want to be able to choose the most qualified candidate, not, in such an important role where there's so few people doing that job. We really need cream of the crop. I mean, Dan can attest to how important that job is. So we're hoping that this resolution will get us some bidders, and we'll be able to choose, one of multiple, and keep that function moving along.
So all 4 of those people will get the dollar something paid.
There's only one other person that has that exact title. There's only one person that's a water utility person. Nope. So water utility, it's going to be the new hire, and then the one person that's currently holds that title. There's only 2 people in that title.
We'll have to take the extra dollar something. How much is that going to cost you, estimated? For
20-80 hours. So between 2 people, like $4,000. 4,000 to 6,000.
1, 2, 3, senior.
Senior?
So it's just the entry level one to attract someone else from elsewhere.
$6,000.
Wow, you guys go through all that stuff just to get people.
Yeah.
It's already, again, we're going to absorb this in the budget. We don't need any additional funds, but it's going to get us the person that we need.
And they're first responders in a whole array of emergency situations in the middle of the night.
Right, they are
So
on call. They're an on-call group.
Any other questions? Someone care to move the motion as presented? Thank you. Second.
Aye.
Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. And we're on a roll.
Okay, last one. So since those 2 passed, there were 3 different salary schedules. The last and final one has both of those in one, because I had to make 3 different ones. If one passed, if the other passed, or if they both passed. So the one that has the combination is the official salary schedule that's being approved and going with the MOUs. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. The last MOU is with the Management Employees Association. We just negotiated that contract. It was effective April 1st, 2024. It runs through December 31st, 2026. During those contract negotiations, we added a few titles into the unit. One of them was Biochemist 2. Just in the midst of all the changes that were going on, the unit didn't realize that that was another person that went out in the field, and they were omitted with the boot allowance. So we want to give them the boot allowance, and we've also added an additional title, a Geographic Information Systems Tech 2. That person's going to be out. They're going to be doing some drone deployments and things like that, so they also need a pair of boots. So this resolution is to add a pair of boots for 2 employees to the contract.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Well, we've had people in that capacity go out and all they have is dress shoes and they're out in the mud and they come in and they're, because they don't know from day to day if they can end up in a sticky, muddy situation. Now, the full clothing allowance provides Carhartts, pants, coats. They're not getting any of that. It's just shoes.
Actually, so let me backtrack. The Geographic Information System is not getting just shoes. They are in the same group as the Junior Engineer, Assistant Engineer, Senior Engineer, and Water Maintenance Manager. So they actually get a biennial allowance of 400 hours. So it's $150 more. But again, all the
What, clean their clothes?
No. To get
For boots?
They get boots and clothes. I mean, for $400 biannually, they're not going to get a crazy amount of stuff. But it's what was agreed upon in the agreement. We just are adding the one title to the one group and the other title to the other group to have them, on par with their peers. So we're not, cheating somebody that.
They spend a lot of time in the fields.
These guys get tough.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to give people things that aren't part of the agreement. So we have to add it to the agreement because, we don't want to be in the habit of saying, we'll make an exception for you. We're going to give you something we didn't negotiate. We're going to give you something we didn't negotiate. So we want it in the agreement before we provide it to them.
Well, I see in the MOU, this one isn't signed by the representatives of MEA,
Yes, Long has signed it. I'm on my copy.
and ours wasn't. So I just wanted to make sure that we're in
Yes.
agreement with this thing.
They've already.
Yes, they did sign it.
Any other questions about boots?
I wouldn't want to go out without boots.
I wouldn't either. For this, I'm thinking about putting on my waders. Someone care to move the resolution? Thanks, Vince. Is there a second? Thanks, Bruce. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Adoption of updated material specifications. Dan?
Yep, we're looking to adopt some updates to our material standards for our mains and services. I'll start with the first one. It has to do with our water service lines, 2-inch and smaller, the brass. We wanted to identify the American Water Works Association standard, which is C800-21. And that specifically requires brass to be of a certain type for direct burial, so there's not a lot of corrosion. The second change is the hydrants that we allow in our system. We'd like to standardize based upon the Kennedy model. We have about 40% of our system contains Kennedy hydrants. We have Corey hydrants, Eddy hydrants, Clough hydrants, Mueller hydrants, ABK hydrants, a variety. So this is really to ease our maintenance, to better our inventory. We don't have to have a lot of random parts there. Bulk purchasing, give us a little leverage if we're buying one hydrant, and there are multiple vendors we can get pricing from, so we don't have to, even though we're standardizing on one hydrant, we can get multiple costs from different vendors at the time of our bidding.
Is there a big transition between hydrants when you change them, or normal dig down to the base, or you could just change the top part of it?
No, it'd be changed. Right now, for these older hydrants, we just replace them entirely because the cost to get repair parts is almost the same cost as replacing the hydrant itself. So yeah.
And some of these hydrants are 75 years old.
Yeah, easy. Some of them don't even move.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
Do we exercise the hydrants or do the
department.
local public fire departments do it?
That's when you get the brown water.
Well, yeah.
They don't do it right.
Yeah.
I'd rather at least getting water, you know.
Any questions for Dan regarding this? A motion to approve. Thank you, Frank. A second. Thanks, Rich. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Pat?
I got about 30 or so items. Just kidding. I've boiled it down to two. For
Got a
Ellis.
second for each.
No, I just want to mention on January 30th, one of the associations we belong to, it's lovingly called AMWA, which is the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, is doing a webinar on the regulatory environment. They're going to have their best and brightest legislative analysts on a webinar live to talk about any changes that they know about that have already happened, changes that are under consideration, speculative changes regarding a number of topics. One is what's been called the LIWAT program, which is the Low Income Water Assistance Program, maybe refunding that. There are some bills in Congress. But the lead and copper rule, some things that are being considered. AWWA has filed a lawsuit against some of the languages, seeking clarifications. So we're going to get an update on that. And the long and short of it is that our senior staff will all be in here that day watching the webinar. And hopefully we're going to get some kind of a better bearing on what the future might look like for some of these issues like lead services and stuff. So I just thought I'd mention that. If anything comes out of that that's anything substantial, obviously we'll share it with the board as soon as we know about it. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that we're still progressing with the bond issue. And the latest conference call we had just a couple days ago was that they're looking to potentially price the bonds the last week of January. And so we'd be looking for a closing in very early February where we'd actually get the proceeds deposited to our account. But so far, everything's going smoothly. We jumped on a call, Jim and I, and Phil and Dan were on it as well. And they said, you're now admitted to the call. You're joining 15 parties. So there's a huge team that puts this thing together, and everybody's working diligently on it. But it's pretty aggressive to price them in the last week of January. It means we got to get ratings prior to that, so we'll be doing rating presentations. But the whole thing is fast-tracked, and as I said, hopefully we'll have our money in early February, and then we'll move ahead with our capital projects, and Dan's already gearing up to spend that money as fast as we can get it. So anyway, that's the update. So
How are we doing on water level?
water level's pretty good right now. As of this morning, it's roughly 2 feet above average. It's still doing pretty good. Now with the watershed freezing up a little bit, the discharge rate, according to the operating diagram, is about twice as the measured inflow. The inflow is running about 480 CFS as of this morning, cubic feet per second. The discharge is closer to around 900. So it's starting to drop steadily. I calculated based on what we lost over the last week, if it continues at that pace, we'll hit 1,200 elevation in late February. And at that point, it's probably manageable until we get the thaw. So this boost we had was a real good shot in the arm for us.
And the thaw should be much more productive.
There's going to be a good snowpack up there this year. Last year we were lacking a little bit of snowpack, yeah, but I don't think that's going to be the case at all this year. So we'll definitely start with a full reservoir at the beginning of the season.
Any other questions for Pat?
Yeah, anything new on the line going down the valley?
Not yet. We're still in conversation with all the towns. A few people are still kind of pondering it and sitting on the fence. We're trying to corral them all to the Golden Gate and get it together. But we're trying to set meetings up and revive the whole conversation. We're getting a few mixed signals from some people, particularly down in Herkimer. But we hope to meet with them in the next 2 weeks and get a yes or no and finalize what's happening.
Any other questions for Pat? Thank you. Any old business? Any new business? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.